Imagine a wave, not of water, but of thick, sticky molasses, 25 feet high, crashing through the streets of a major city. It sounds like something from a fantasy novel, but this was a real and deadly disaster. Today, we're diving into the bizarre and tragic story of the Great Molasses Flood of 1919, a catastrophe that drowned a Boston neighborhood in sweetness and sorrow. It all starts in Boston North End, a bustling, working class Italian American neighborhood packed with homes, businesses, and people. Towering over it all was a steel tank of monstrous proportions. It stood 50 feet tall and held an almost unbelievable 2.3 million gallons of crude molasses. This tank belonged to the Purity Distilling Company, a subsidiary of U.S. Industrial Alcohol. They used the molasses to produce industrial alcohol, a key ingredient in munitions for World War I. But this tank was a disaster waiting to happen. It was a rush job, built quickly to meet wartime demand. The steel walls were too thin, the rivets were shoddy, and it was never even tested with water before being filled with the heavy, viscous molasses. From the moment it was filled, the tank groaned and creaked. It leaked so badly that locals knew they could bring cups and pails to collect the sweet drippings for free. Children would dip sticks in the puddles for a sugary treat. They nicknamed it Purity's Weeping Tank. Company employees warned their bosses that the tank was structurally unsound, but their concerns were ignored. The company just painted it brown to hide the leaks and hoped for the best. The fateful day was January 10th, 1919. It started off cold, just a few degrees above freezing. But then an unusual warm front moved in, and the temperature soared to over 40 degrees Fahrenheit, a balmy day for a Boston winter. Inside the poorly built tank, this sudden temperature change was catastrophic. The cold, thick molasses began to warm up and ferment. As it fermented, it released carbon dioxide gas, building up immense pressure inside the already stressed container. The tank was a ticking time bomb. Just after lunchtime, at around 12:40 p.m., the bomb went off. Without warning, the tank didn't just leak or burst a seam, it completely ruptured. It exploded with the force of a bomb. People nearby heard a deafening roar, a series of rapid fire, machine gun-like sounds as the steel rivets shot out like bullets, followed by the horrifying screech of tearing metal. A shockwave rippled through the neighborhood, powerful enough to knock a nearby elevated train off its tracks and shake buildings miles away. The 50-foot steel tank was ripped to shreds, with huge, jagged pieces of metal flying through the air like shrapnel, slicing through buildings and structures. And then came the wave. A colossal, dark brown wall of molasses, 25 feet high at its peak, erupted from the base of the tank. It wasn't slow and sluggish like you might imagine. Fueled by the explosive force, this sticky tsunami moved at an incredible 35 miles per hour, faster than anyone could run. It was a churning, unstoppable force of nature, but made of syrup. It crashed into the streets with the power of a locomotive, smashing everything in its path. The destruction was absolute. Wooden tenements were lifted off their foundations and crushed into splinters. A firehouse was flattened, trapping firefighters inside. Horses, hitched to their wagons, were engulfed and drowned in the thick goo before they could even react. The wave hit a freight yard, picking up rail cars and tossing them around like toys. People walking home for lunch or playing in the streets had no chance. They were swept up, buried, and suffocated by the thick, heavy liquid. What made the molasses so deadly wasn't just its speed and force, but its properties. It was like a combination of a tidal wave and quicksand. Once the initial wave passed, the streets were left submerged in a knee-deep, and in some places waist-deep, sea of sticky death. Survivors described a horrifying scene of chaos and despair. People were trapped, stuck like flies on flypaper, unable to move. The more they struggled, the deeper they sank. Rescuers who rushed to the scene found themselves in the same predicament. The molasses would pull at their boots, making every step a monumental effort. They risked becoming victims themselves. A nurse who was one of the first on the scene described the horrifying sight of people, horses, and debris, all churning in the brown tide. She saw a man's head and shoulders sticking out, calling for help, before he was slowly sucked under. The screams of the trapped and injured mingled with the groans of collapsing buildings. The air was thick with the sickly sweet smell of molasses, a smell that would forever be associated with death for those who survived. In the immediate aftermath, the rescue effort was heroic and desperate. 116 cadets from the USS Nantucket, a training ship docked nearby, were among the first to arrive. They waded into the sticky morass, pulling victims to safety. Firefighters, police, and ordinary citizens worked tirelessly for days. They had to navigate a landscape that was completely alien. The molasses was so thick that it clogged everything. It took 4 days just to find all the victims. In the end, 21 people lost their lives, and another 150 were seriously injured. The victims ranged from a 10-year-old boy to a 78-year-old man. The cleanup was a monumental task that took weeks, even months. The city tried everything. At first, they used fire hoses, but spraying cold salt water from the harbor only made the molasses thicker and harder to move. They soon learned that warm water worked better. They covered the streets in sand to absorb the syrup, then had crews of workers scrape it all up with shovels and brooms. The sticky brown mess was everywhere. It was tracked all over the city on people's shoes. It got into streetcars, into homes, into businesses. For months, it was said that nearly every surface in Boston had a sticky film on it. The harbor was stained brown for half a year. As the city cleaned up, the question on everyone's mind was, who was to blame? The company, U.S. Industrial Alcohol, immediately tried to deflect responsibility. Their story was that the tank had been blown up by anarchists or Italian radicals, playing on the political fears of the era. They pointed to the wave of bombings that were happening around the country at the time. It was a convenient excuse, but the families of the victims weren't buying it. They sued. This led to one of the first and largest class action lawsuits in American history. The trial lasted for years and involved thousands of pages of testimony. Experts were brought in from all over the country. They analyzed the failed steel, the shoddy construction, and the company's own records. The evidence was overwhelming. The company's claim of a bomb was nonsense. The truth was far simpler and far more damning. It was pure corporate negligence. The court found that the tank was a textbook example of cutting corners. The steel plates were too thin and too brittle to hold the immense weight of the molasses. The company had rushed construction and skipped crucial safety tests, like filling the tank with water first, all in the name of profit. The constant leaking wasn't just a nuisance. It was a clear warning sign that the tank was failing, a sign the company had willfully ignored. In the end, U.S. Industrial Alcohol was found liable. They were ordered to pay out $628,000 in damages to the victims and their families. That's equivalent to about $10 million today. While the sum may seem small by modern standards, the verdict was a landmark decision. It was a huge victory for public safety and corporate accountability. The case helped usher in a new era of government regulation, leading to modern laws that require engineers and architects to sign off on their plans and for building permits and inspections to be standardized. The sweet, sticky deaths of 21 people directly led to safer construction practices for everyone. The legacy of the Great Molasses Flood lives on in Boston in strange ways. For decades after the disaster, residents of the North End claimed that on hot summer days, they could still smell the faint, sweet scent of molasses lingering in the air. The site of the tank is now a public park with a small plaque commemorating the tragedy. It serves as a quiet reminder of that bizarre day when a river of syrup brought death and destruction. The story of the Great Molasses Flood is more than just a weird historical footnote. It's a powerful and timeless lesson about the catastrophic cost of corporate greed and the tragic consequences of ignoring clear warnings. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating and tragic as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into forgotten history. Let us know in the comments what other strange historical events you'd like to see us cover. See you next time.